delivery?
I didn't order anything. What the hell is wrong with you?
I just needed to talk to Amara.
At midnight? Pretending to be the delivery driver?
I just needed to talk to Amara.
3 months earlier, nobody would have imagined things could reach this point, especially not Amara Cole. At 29, Amara had become one of the youngest financial directors in Johannesburg. People in the business world called her a machine. Precise, ruthless, focused. She woke up at 5 every morning, worked out, reviewed reports before sunrise, answered emails while most people were still asleep. Her life moved with such discipline that even her assistants became nervous around her. But none of that came from arrogance. Amara had grown up learning that survival depended on control. She trusted schedules, numbers, structure, not people. But Nina had always been different. Nina was chaos wrapped inside charm. Loud laughter, spontaneous decisions, constant energy. Where Amara calculated everything, Nina followed emotion. Every story has a meaning, and every voice deserves to be heard. If you enjoy powerful storytelling, emotional journeys, and unforgettable narratives, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Narrative, and become part of our growing community. Also like and share with friends and family. Don't enjoy the story alone. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. And let us know in the comments what kind of stories you want to hear next. Your next unforgettable story begins here, on The Narrative. They had met at 14 after a fight in school. Amara had been sitting alone behind the classroom trying to stop herself from crying after being mocked for her second-hand shoes. Nina had walked over, insulted the boys responsible, then sat beside Amara like they had known each other forever. From that day forward, they became inseparable. Nina defended her, protected her, stayed beside her through every difficult stage of life. When Amara's mother died unexpectedly during university, Nina was the one who slept beside her for nearly 2 weeks. When Amara nearly dropped out because of financial pressure, Nina worked extra shifts at a cafe to help her. People admired their friendship. Some even envied it. And for years, Amara believed nothing could ever come between them. Until Elias entered her life. The first time they met was completely accidental. Amara had attended a charity fundraiser for urban housing projects because her company sponsored the event. She had planned to stay for 20 minutes. Instead, she spent nearly 3 hours speaking to a quiet architect standing near the balcony. Elias didn't speak to impress people. That was the first thing she noticed. He listened more than he talked. And unlike the executives constantly trying to flatter her, Elias treated her like an ordinary human being. That unsettled her, in a good way. By the second date, Amara found herself smiling more. By the third, she started turning off her work phone. Nina noticed immediately. "You disappeared for 6 hours yesterday," Nina said one evening while sitting inside Amara's penthouse. Amara shrugged casually. "I was busy. With the architect." Amara looked up. Nina smiled while sipping wine. "What?" Nina laughed. "You only smile like that when it's him." Amara tried hiding it. Failed. Nina leaned back. "So it's serious?" "I don't know yet. But you want it to be." Amara hesitated, then nodded softly. For a brief moment, something strange crossed Nina's face. So fast it almost disappeared. But Amara noticed it. A tiny flicker, like disappointment. The feeling vanished just as quickly. Nina smiled again. "Well, I guess somebody finally stole you from your spreadsheets." Amara laughed. But later that night, while brushing her teeth, she remembered the expression. And for reasons she couldn't explain, it bothered her. Weeks passed. The relationship deepened. Elias introduced Amara to parts of herself she had forgotten existed. She laughed more, slept better, started leaving work before midnight. Even her employees noticed. But Nina's behavior slowly began changing. At first, it was subtle, interrupting dinner dates with unnecessary emergency calls, showing up unexpectedly at Amara's office, making passive-aggressive jokes. So when exactly do best friends start needing appointments? Amara brushed it off. Nina had always been emotionally intense. That was normal. Or at least, it used to feel normal. Then strange things started happening. One Saturday afternoon, Amara and Elias drove nearly 2 hours outside the city for a private resort weekend. Nobody knew where they were. At least that's what Amora thought. Halfway through lunch, her phone buzzed. Nina. Amora answered. You guys picked a nice place, Nina said casually. Amora froze. Her eyes slowly lifted toward Elias. What? The mountain view looks beautiful. I checked the resort online. Amora's stomach tightened. How do you know where we are? A small silence followed. Then Nina laughed. Oh, relax. You shared your location with me ages ago, remember? Amora frowned. No, I didn't. You did after that robbery incident 2 years ago. I installed that safety app for you. Amora suddenly remembered. Late one night after work, Nina insisting the city was becoming dangerous, helping her set up security apps. At the time, it had felt caring. Now it felt different. Very different. Elias watched her expression carefully. What happened? He asked. Amora forced a smile. Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. That night, while Elias slept beside her, Amora sat alone near the hotel window scrolling through her phone settings. And there it was. A tracking application running silently in the background. Active for almost 2 years. Her chest tightened. Outside, lightning flashed across the dark mountains. Amora stayed at the screen for a long time. Then another notification appeared. A message from Nina. Don't be mad. I only worry because I care about you. Amora read the message twice. Something cold settled in her stomach. Because suddenly, she wasn't sure whether Nina was protecting her anymore, or watching her. The drive to Green Hollow took nearly 4 hours. The further they traveled from Johannesburg, the quieter Amora became. Tall buildings slowly disappeared behind open land, endless fields, and narrow roads lined with old trees. Elias drove calmly with one hand resting on the steering wheel while soft music played through the car speakers. Amora stayed outside the window. She had spent most of her life avoiding places like this. Villages reminded her of instability, of poverty, of everything she fought to escape. Yet sitting beside Elias somehow made the unfamiliar feel safe. You're nervous, Elias said. A little. My family already loves you. They haven't even met me. Elias smiled. They love anyone who makes me this happy. Amora looked away quickly, hiding the smile forming on her face. For the first time in years, her future no longer felt like an endless schedule. It actually felt human. That scared her more than she wanted to admit. Green Hollow looked like something from another lifetime. Children ran freely through dusty roads. Neighbors greeted each other from porches. Music floated from nearby houses. The entire community seemed connected in ways Amora had forgotten people could be. Elias' family welcomed her warmly. His mother hugged her tightly before she could even introduce herself properly. His younger cousins surrounded her with endless questions. And although Amora felt awkward at first, she slowly relaxed. Until Nina called. The moment her name appeared on the screen, Elias noticed Amora's expression change. You should answer, he said gently. Amora hesitated, then picked up. Hey. Nina sounded irritated immediately. So you really left the city without telling me? Amora closed her eyes briefly. Nina, I told you last week. You said you were thinking about it. Well, I came. A silence followed. Then Nina asked quietly, who else is there? Amora frowned. His family. And what? I don't know. Are there women there? Friends? People from his past? Amora blinked. What kind of question is that? I'm just trying to look out for you. Amora lowered her voice. I don't need an investigation every time I leave town. Nina went quiet. Too quiet. Then she said softly, you've changed. The line disconnected. Amora stayed at the phone. Something about Nina's tone unsettled her. That evening, Green Hollow held its annual Lantern Festival. The entire village gathered near the open field surrounded by glowing lights and music. Women danced in colorful traditional clothing, while children ran laughing between food stalls. Amora stood beside Elias watching the celebration with amazement. It's beautiful, she admitted. Elias smiled proudly. You fit here more than you think. Amora laughed. That's impossible. Before Elias could answer, headlights suddenly appeared near the field entrance. A car. Moving fast. Too fast. Villagers turned curiously as the vehicle stopped abruptly near the gathering. Then the driver's door opened. Amora's stomach dropped. Nina stepped out, wearing sunglasses. At night. Elias' expression hardened instantly. Amora walked forward in disbelief. What are you doing here? Nina removed the glasses slowly. You weren't answering my calls. So you drove 4 hours to find me. Nina shrugged. I was worried. Amora's voice lowered. No, this is insane. Nearby villagers pretended not to stare. Elias approached carefully. Nina, this isn't appropriate. Nina looked at him coldly. I wasn't talking to you. Tension exploded instantly. Amara quickly stepped between them. Nina, how did you even know where we were? Nina looked genuinely confused. Your location. Amara felt heat rise into her chest. You're still tracking me. Nina blinked. I told you why I use it. You never asked if you could keep using it. People nearby had completely stopped pretending not to listen. Elias' mother watched nervously from a distance. Nina folded her arms. So now I'm the villain because I care whether you're safe. That's not the point. Then what is the point, Amara? Her voice cracked slightly. Ever since he showed up, you act like I'm some problem you need to manage. Amara stared at her. Because beneath the anger, Nina genuinely sounded hurt. And somehow that made everything worse. The argument ended only after Amara convinced Nina to stay at a nearby guest lodge for the night. But the damage was already done. Whispers spread through the festival. Elias became distant, and Amara could feel the atmosphere changing around her. Later that night, she sat alone outside the lodge staring at the dark sky while crickets echoed through the fields. Elias joined her quietly. You okay? He asked. Amara nodded automatically, then shook her head. I don't understand why she's acting like this. Elias stayed silent for a moment. Finally he said carefully, she's afraid. Of what? Losing you. Amara frowned. That doesn't explain this. No, Elias admitted. It doesn't. The next evening, the village gathered again for the final festival ceremony. Lanterns floated across the night sky like stars. Music filled the air. Amara wore a simple traditional dress Elias' mother had given her earlier that day. For the first time, she genuinely felt accepted there. Then Elias took her hand. His expression suddenly serious. Walk with me. Confused, Amara followed him toward the center of the field. Villagers slowly turned toward them. Music softened. Amara's heartbeat quickened. No, she whispered. Elias smiled nervously. Then knelt. The entire village erupted with excitement. Amara covered her mouth in shock. Before you, Elias said, voice trembling slightly. My life felt incomplete in ways I didn't even understand. Amara's eyes filled with tears. You make everything feel meaningful. He opened the ring box. Marry me. For a moment, the world disappeared. The crowd, the music, the tension, everything. Only Elias remained. And despite all the chaos surrounding them, Amara knew. Yes. Cheers exploded across the field. People clapped. Music resumed loudly. Elias slipped the ring onto her finger while Amara laughed through tears. Then her eyes lifted instinctively toward the crowd. And found Nina. Standing completely still. Not smiling. Not clapping. Just watching. A strange emptiness sat behind her eyes. And suddenly, even in the middle of celebration, Amara felt cold. By the time they returned to Johannesburg, something between Amara and Nina had permanently shifted. The silence became heavier, more uncomfortable, and strangely unpredictable. Some days Nina acted completely normal. She sent funny videos, talked casually, even apologized for overreacting in Green Hollow. Then other days became unbearable. She called repeatedly late at night, sent emotional messages, accused Amara of abandoning her. The emotional whiplash exhausted Amara, but guilt kept stopping her from confronting the situation properly. Because no matter how complicated things became, this was still Nina, the person who had stayed beside her through every painful chapter of life. That history mattered. At least it used to. One Thursday evening, Amara attended a company dinner with executives visiting from Cape Town. It was the type of event she normally handled effortlessly. Except her phone kept vibrating under the table. Nina. Again. And again. And again. By the 7th call, even the executive sitting beside her noticed. Everything all right? He asked. Amara forced a smile. Yes. Just a friend. The calls continued. Finally, embarrassed and frustrated, Amara stepped outside the restaurant to answer. What? She snapped. Silence. Then Nina's voice came softly through the phone. You sound angry. Because you called me 8 times. I needed to hear your voice. Amara closed her eyes. Nina, I'm working. You're always working now unless you're with Elias. That's not fair. Another silence. Then Nina asked quietly, "Do you even miss me anymore?" The question caught Amara off guard. Before she could answer, Nina disconnected. Amara stood outside the restaurant feeling emotionally drained. Behind her, laughter echoed from inside the building while city traffic moved endlessly through the streets. For the first time, she admitted something to herself. She was beginning to feel trapped. 2 weeks later, Elias invited Amara to spend the weekend at his apartment. No work, no meetings, no wedding discussions, just peace. That Friday night felt almost normal again. They cooked together, watched old movies, laughed about terrible architectural designs online. Amara finally felt herself relaxing. Then the doorbell rang. Elias frowned. It's nearly midnight. He opened the door. Nobody was there. Only a small paper bag sitting outside. Confused, Elias picked it up. Inside was Amara's favorite chocolate brand. And a handwritten note. "You forgot dessert." Amara stared at the handwriting. Her blood ran cold. "Nina." Elias immediately stepped into the hallway. Empty. But downstairs, a car engine started suddenly, then sped away. That night neither of them slept properly. The next morning, Elias finally said what he had been holding back for weeks. "This isn't healthy anymore." Amara sat quietly. "I know. She's watching you constantly. She thinks she's protecting me." Elias looked at her carefully. "No, I think she's terrified of losing control." The words hung heavily between them. Amara hated how accurate they sounded. Things escalated again 3 days later. Amara had just finished a stressful board meeting when security from her office building called her downstairs. "She says she's family," the receptionist explained nervously. Amara walked into the lobby and froze. Nina sat there holding coffee, smiling brightly. "I brought your favorite." Employees passing nearby slowed down curiously. Amara lowered her voice immediately. "You cannot keep showing up unannounced." Nina's smile faded. "Wow. I'm serious. So now I need permission to see my best friend." "This isn't about permission." "Then what is it about?" Amara struggled for words. Because deep down, even she couldn't fully explain the discomfort growing inside her. Nina stood slowly. "You know what hurts the most?" she whispered. "What?" "You used to need me." Amara's chest tightened. People nearby pretended not to stare. Nina gave a weak laugh. "Now every time you look at me, it's like I'm some burden." "That's not true." "Then why do you keep pulling away?" Amara finally lost patience. "Because you won't stop crossing boundaries." The lobby went quiet. Nina stared at her in shock. Then pain slowly spread across her face. Real pain. Not manipulation. Not performance. Actual heartbreak. For one terrible second, Amara almost apologized. Then Nina spoke softly. "I would never abandon you the way you're abandoning me." And walked away. That sentence haunted Amara for days. Meanwhile, Elias grew increasingly uneasy. He tried hiding it. Failed. One morning his friend Marcus visited the apartment after noticing how distracted Elias had become. "You look exhausted," Marcus said. Elias laughed bitterly. "You ever feel like someone's slowly dragging chaos into your life?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "A friend." Elias nodded. Marcus became serious immediately. "Listen carefully." Elias looked at him. "People like that don't magically stop. She's been in Amara's life forever. That doesn't excuse unhealthy behavior." Elias stayed quiet. Marcus leaned forward. "If somebody keeps disrespecting your relationship in your space, eventually you have to ask yourself whether love is enough to survive it." Those words stayed with Elias long after Marcus left. And later that night, his worst fears became reality. A knock echoed through the apartment. Elias checked the time. 11:47 p.m. Confused, he walked toward the door. "Delivery," a voice called. Elias frowned. He hadn't ordered anything. Slowly, he opened the door and saw Nina, wearing a delivery helmet, holding fake food bags, smiling nervously. Everything inside Elias immediately hardened. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Nina's expression cracked. "I just needed to talk to Amara." "At midnight, pretending to be a delivery driver. I knew you wouldn't let me inside otherwise." Amara appeared behind Elias. The moment she saw Nina, her face drained of color, and suddenly everyone understood. Things had gone far beyond friendship. Rain poured heavily outside the apartment while silence swallowed the hallway. Nina stood frozen near the doorway holding the fake delivery bag. Amara stared at her in disbelief. "What are you doing?" Nina looked exhausted. Mascara slightly smeared. Eyes swollen like she hadn't slept properly in days. "I needed to see you." "At midnight." Elias snapped. Nina ignored him completely. Her attention stayed fixed on Amara. "You stopped answering me." Amara's chest tightened. "Because I needed space. And you couldn't just say that." "I did." "No," Nina whispered emotionally. "You pulled away slowly and expected me not to notice." Elias stepped forward. "This ends tonight." Nina finally looked at him. The hatred in her expression shocked even Amara. "You think you know her?" Nina asked quietly. "You met the successful version." Elias stayed silent. "I knew her when she couldn't afford food." Nina's voice trembled harder. "I knew her when she cried herself to sleep after losing her mother." Amara looked down. "Nina, I was there for everything." Tears rolled down Nina's face. "And now suddenly I'm the problem." Amara felt guilt crashing into her chest. Because part of what Nina said was true. Nina had carried pieces of her pain for years. But another part of Amara understood something equally important. Love did not justify control, and care should never feel like imprisonment. "You can't keep doing this," Amara said softly. Nina laughed bitterly. "Doing what?" "Loving you too much. This isn't love anymore." The words landed like a slap. Nina went completely still. Even Elias looked surprised. Amara's voice shook as she continued. "You track me. You monitor me. You show up everywhere uninvited. You make me feel guilty every time I choose my own life." Tears streamed down Nina's face. "I was trying to protect us. There is no us like that anymore." Silence. Heavy. Painful. Then Nina whispered the question she had been avoiding for months. "So he wins." Amara frowned. "This isn't about winning. But you're choosing him." Amara inhaled slowly. "No." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm finally choosing myself." Something inside Nina visibly broke. She backed away slowly, like the words physically hurt. Then she laughed weakly through tears. "You know what's funny?" Nobody answered. "I spent years protecting you from everybody." Her voice cracked completely. "And I never realized one day I'd become the person you needed protection from." The apartment fell silent. Even Elias softened slightly. For the first time, Nina no longer looked manipulative. She looked lost. Completely lost. Amara stepped closer carefully. "Nina." But Nina shook her head. "No, don't do that." "Do what?" "Feel sorry for me." She wiped her tears aggressively. "I hate pity." Another silence followed. Then Nina quietly removed something from her pocket. Amara's stomach tightened instantly. It was the spare key to her penthouse. The one Amara had given Nina years earlier. Nina placed it gently on the table beside the doorway. "I guess you should have this back." The sound of metal hitting would felt strangely final. Amara suddenly remembered hundreds of memories at once. Movie nights. Shared birthdays. Late-night conversations. Surviving grief together. Growing up together. It felt impossible that all of it could end like this. But deep down, she knew it already had. Nina moved toward the door slowly. Before leaving, she turned back one last time. "Do you know what the worst part is?" Amara looked at her silently. "I really believed nobody would ever understand you the way I did." Then she walked away. The elevator doors closed. And just like that, years of friendship disappeared into silence. For the next several days, Amara barely spoke. She moved through life emotionally numb. Work meetings blurred together. Phone calls felt distant. Even sleep became difficult. Because despite everything Nina had done, losing her still hurt. One evening, Amara sat alone on her balcony overlooking Johannesburg while city lights flickered endlessly below. Elias stepped outside quietly carrying 2 cups of tea. He handed one to her. Neither spoke for a while. Finally Elias asked softly, "Do you regret it?" Amara stayed at the skyline. Then answered honestly, "I regret that it got this bad." She swallowed hard. "But I don't regret protecting my peace." Elias nodded slowly. Amara exhaled deeply. 4 years. I confused guilt with loyalty." She looked down at the tea in her hands. "I thought sacrificing myself was what good friends did." Elias listened quietly. "But real love shouldn't make you feel trapped." The wind moved gently through the balcony. For the first time in months, Amara felt something unfamiliar. Relief. Small, fragile, but real. Over the following weeks, she started rebuilding parts of herself she had neglected for years. She began therapy, started taking weekends off work, spent more time outdoors, learned how to exist without constantly carrying everyone else's emotional weight. And slowly, life became lighter. One Saturday morning, Amara visited a small art market downtown alone. No meetings, no pressure, no chaos, just peace. As she walked between stalls, live music echoed softly through the street while strangers laughed nearby. For once, she wasn't rushing. She wasn't fixing problems. She was simply existing. Her phone buzzed inside her purse. Amara casually pulled it out. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Then another message arrived immediately. A photo. Amara frowned. The image showed her standing exactly where she was now, taken from a distance. Her blood turned cold. A second message appeared. You really thought I could let you go that easily? Amara's breathing stopped. Slowly, she lifted her eyes. People moved normally around the crowded market. Families, tourists, street musicians. Anyone could be watching her. Anyone. Then across the street, she saw a familiar figure standing beside a black car. Nina. Watching. Completely still. Amara's heart slammed violently against her chest. And before she could move, Nina smiled, then drove away, leaving Amara frozen in the middle of the crowd, realizing with horror, this story was far from over. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting stories. Like, comment the story you want to hear next. Share with family and friends so that they can enjoy the story as well. Thank you.